Welcome to another episode of real-life haunted stories. If you love chilling tales and spine-tingling horror stories, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a scare. New nightmares drop every week. Stay haunted. So, let's start our today's episode. Welcome to tonight's spine-chilling episode. As I told from last few days, today's episode will be very, very creepy and special. Over the past few days, I stumbled upon some of the creepiest, most unsettling stories shared by none other than a late-night Uber driver in New York City. I talked with him with a long time, and he is from the country of India. As the city's neon lights flickered in the distance and the streets grew eerily quiet, he told me tales that have kept me up at night. Now, it's time to pass them along to you. Brace yourselves, because what you're about to hear might just make you think twice before stepping into the shadows. Story 1. The Cursed Bridge at Night. In the village of Mohanpur, surrounded by rivers on all sides, stood an ancient wooden bridge known as Padma Bridge. Despite being an old architectural marvel, the locals referred to it as the Cursed Bridge. It was said that anyone who crossed the bridge after sunset never returned. The villagers believed that an invisible force resided on the other side, claiming the lives of those who dared to trespass. The beginning of a mystery. Years ago, when the bridge was first constructed, an engineer and his wife lived nearby. One day, his wife, Kamala, heard the cries of a baby from the other side of the bridge. Driven by curiosity, she crossed the bridge, but she was never seen again. The next morning, villagers found Kamala's blood-stained sari on a stone near the bridge. Stricken with grief and guilt, the engineer searched tirelessly for her until one night he jumped off the bridge and ended his life. Since then, the villagers were convinced that the bridge was cursed and no one dared cross it after dark. Ajay's arrival and his skepticism. Many years later, a young historian named Ajay arrived from the city. Fresh out of university, he had come to Mohanpur to study the history of rural legends. He was particularly intrigued by the tales of the Padma Bridge. Ajay, a rationalist, dismissed the villagers' fears as mere superstition. Laughing off their warnings, he declared, "These are just old wives' tales. I'll prove there's nothing to fear." The journey to the cursed bridge. One evening, AJ decided to explore the bridge himself. Armed with a lantern and a small knife, he made his way toward the bridge. The villagers begged him not to go, but he paid them no heed. As AJ stepped onto the bridge, an eerie silence engulfed him. The river beneath flowed slowly, and the creaking wooden planks echoed ominously in the still night. Halfway across the bridge, he heard faint footsteps behind him. He turned around but saw no one. Just as he was about to dismiss it as his imagination, a woman's sorrowful voice called out, "Why have you come here? Turn back." A terrifying encounter. Suddenly, Ajay saw a woman standing at the far end of the bridge. She was dressed in a white sari, her long hair cascading down her shoulders, and her eyes glowed an unnatural red. The woman spoke in a haunting voice. "This bridge is cursed. My husband and I are trapped here forever. Anyone who crosses this bridge joins us. Now, it's your turn." Ajay froze in terror as the woman's gaze seemed to paralyze him. Her voice grew louder, echoing in his ears. He tried to move, but his body refused to obey. The horror beneath the bridge. Before Ajay could react, he felt a cold hand grab his ankle from beneath the bridge. Looking down, he saw another figure emerge from the river's depths, an exact replica of himself. The watery doppelganger smirked and said, "You will never leave. You'll stay here with us forever." The villagers' discovery. The next morning, villagers found AJ unconscious on the far side of the bridge. They carried him back to the village, but he was never the same again. He muttered nonsensical words, often saying, "They're calling me. They won't let me go." AJ grew weaker by the day and eventually died under mysterious circumstances. The bridge today. After Ajay's death, the Padma Bridge was completely abandoned. The villagers refused to go near it, let alone cross it. Even today, the bridge stands eerily intact, a silent reminder of the many who vanished trying to uncover its dark secrets. Locals still believe that anyone who dares to step onto the cursed bridge will never return. Story 2. The Haunted Graveyard of Gokulpur. In the small village of Gokulpur, located on the outskirts of a dense jungle, there was an old, eerie graveyard that no one dared to enter after dark. The graveyard had been there for centuries, and it was surrounded by thick trees and overgrown vines, making it look even more sinister. Locals often whispered that the graveyard was cursed and haunted by vengeful spirits, and there were many horrifying tales associated with it. The tale of the priest's disappearance. Many years ago, the village priest, Bishwanath, was tasked with performing a final prayer for the souls of the dead in the graveyard. He was known to be a deeply spiritual man, and despite the warnings from the villagers, he decided to perform a special ceremony on the night of a full moon to cleanse the graveyard of its evil spirits. That night, as the villagers watched from afar, the priest entered the graveyard, carrying a lamp and chanting sacred hymns. But as the moon rose high in the sky, something strange happened. The light from his lamp flickered and dimmed. The wind grew stronger, howling through the trees, and the air grew unnaturally cold. Hours passed, but the priest did not return. The villagers, worried about his safety, went to check on him. But what they saw was beyond comprehension. The graveyard gate was wide open, but inside there was no sign of the priest. The lamp was found lying on the ground, its flame extinguished, but there were no footprints leading in or out of the graveyard. Days passed, and the priest was never seen again. Some claimed they heard his faint voice calling for help on quiet nights, while others believed that the spirits in the graveyard had claimed him, just as they had done with many before him. The grave of the unclaimed soul. Years later, a young man named Raghav, known for his curiosity, decided to investigate the mystery of the graveyard. Raghav had heard the stories, but he refused to believe in ghosts. He decided to spend an entire night inside the graveyard, hoping to uncover the truth. As midnight approached, Raghav ventured into the graveyard with nothing but a flashlight and a notebook. The graves were old and weathered, many of them cracked and broken. The air was heavy with the scent of decaying flowers, and the silence was unnerving. Raghav made his way to an old, neglected grave, the one with the cracked tombstone that seemed to have been untouched for years. The inscription on the stone read, "The Unclaimed Soul," but there was no name, just a strange, ominous symbol. As he stood there, inspecting the grave, the temperature around him dropped suddenly. A cold gust of wind blew, and he heard a faint whisper, "Leave this place." Raghav's heart began to race, but he shook off the feeling. He moved closer to the grave, brushing away the dirt and debris. The moment his hand touched the grave, He felt a sharp, cold pain shoot up his arm as if something was pulling him in. The earth beneath him began to shake, and the ground seemed to open up. In a split second, Raghav was knocked to the ground, his flashlight spinning out of his hand. When he looked up, he saw a figure, a pale, translucent figure of a woman draped in a black veil. Her eyes were hollow, and her mouth was twisted into a silent scream. She hovered above the grave, staring at him with an intense, otherworldly gaze. Raghav tried to run, but his legs wouldn't move. It felt as though something was holding him in place. The figure slowly approached him, her hands outstretched, as if trying to pull him into the grave. In that moment, Raghav screamed, and with a burst of strength, he broke free from whatever was holding him down. He ran out of the graveyard, his heart pounding in his chest. But as he crossed the gate, he felt a cold breath on his neck. He never spoke of what happened that night, but he was never the same again. He became a shadow of his former self, haunted by the image of the woman in the graveyard. The haunting that never ended since then. The villagers of Gokulpur have avoided the graveyard, especially at night. Some say that the woman Raghav encountered was the spirit of the unclaimed soul, a restless spirit who was never given a proper burial. Her soul, forever bound to the graveyard, now wanders, seeking vengeance on those who dared disturb her resting place. Locals still claim to hear strange noises from the graveyard late at night, the sound of whispers, the creaking of old tombstones, and sometimes the unmistakable sound of footsteps following them as they pass the entrance. The graveyard stands as a chilling reminder of the restless souls that never found peace. And the villagers know that as long as the grave of the unclaimed soul remains, no one will ever truly be safe. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, to show your support, comment to share your thoughts or ask questions, and don't forget to subscribe to stay updated with our latest content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload.